Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Comics Lair for our retrospective on the CW series Supergirl. The Comics Lair is sponsored by Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and Heroes Convention. I'm your host, Nancy Northcott, and this is a spoiler alert. We will be discussing the last half of the last season of Supergirl. So if you are intending to watch it and have not watched it yet, you should probably come back and watch this panel after you have done that. So just so everybody knows, we are going there. And we'll start by asking everybody to go around and introduce themselves and tell us a little about their involvement with comic books in general and Supergirl in particular. Ange, you want to start?
My name's Dr. Ange, and I run a Supergirl fan site on the internet called Comic Box Commentary, and I've been reviewing Supergirl in all of her different media formats for about the last 12 years, having been a lifelong fan of the character.
Okay, Liz?
I'm Elizabeth Flynn. I write as Eilis Flynn, that's E-I-L-I-S, and pronounce it however you'd like. And I have been a Legion of Superheroes fan and then a Supergirl fan since I was very young. But this particular version of Supergirl just confused me. And yeah, I think it's safe to say that.
Okay, Marisa?
Hi, I'm Marissa Wolfe. I am a science fiction and fantasy author. I've been reading comics since I was old enough to steal them from my dad and get away with it. He's a Superman fan, so I've been reading Superman since I was probably 6, and just comics on my own since I was 10.
And I've been reading comics since I was about 8, starting out with DC. I discovered the Legion of Superheroes when I was 8 and fell in love with them, and Supergirl through Action Comics. And so I've watched the entire 6 seasons of the CW show, and I think we all kind of have mixed feelings about it to some degree. So we'll start with looking at the centerpiece of the show, Melissa Benoist. What did you all think of Melissa as Supergirl? Marisa, you want to start?
Yeah, I will say, so I thought season 1 was adorable. I thought she brought a nice cheery energy to it. Definitely the goofy old school nerdy Clark Kent kind of feel. And I enjoyed that. I really loved that first crossover when there was singing, and then I realized she was a really good singer. That was great. So yeah, especially in the early seasons, I really enjoyed her. And I wouldn't say I ever didn't enjoy her, but I enjoyed the character early on with her.
Liz?
I thought that she did, Benoist did a really nice job of being Supergirl. Now, if you wanted, she was cheerful. She was just so darn cute. You practically want to go and, just pinch her cheek. The character, however, as it went on, it became hard to watch. So, she did much better. She obviously can sing. Yes, Marissa, she was on Glee. I think that's the first time we saw her, and we said, oh yeah, she was on Glee. She was the one who was always really cheerful and chirpy. And I can only assume that the poor actress will have to play a serial killer at some point to get away from that cheerful thing that she has going at some point. Anyway.
You said it was hard to watch. Why was it hard to watch?
Okay, part of it, of course, was the fact that they had a version of the Legion that went against everything that that my husband for Ange and Marissa is a longtime Legion fan. Let's just say he's a longtime Legion fan, and he has certain ideas about what the Legion should be. And the farther they went from the classic Legion, the more he just sat there and basically shook his head and said, why? A lot of it has to do with the fact that they had to come up with Monel, and he was married to Saturn Girl, and saying, no, that just doesn't work for me. I'm getting to be an old fogey. It just doesn't work for me because I was dealing with the classic Legion. It had nothing to do with the show itself. And really, again, it was just sort of shoved in there because Benoist was married to the actor, Chris Wood, that's his name. So anyway.
Okay, well, Ange, what about you?
So I think she's phenomenal. I think that she's like a really solid talent. And I think that even when the scripts were relatively weak, she was always the brightest part of the show. She always seemed to sort of elevate the material when she was able to be part of the show. I think that she does go through quite an arc over the 6 seasons. So she does start out as that young, I'm learning, I'm afraid of my older sister and being disappointing to her, and I have to learn how to fly and use heat vision and things like that, all the way to being sort of like the hero of this earth, even probably greater than Superman. And I think Benoist always is able to pull it off. I think that she does bring what I think are core aspects of the character, which is optimism and brightness and hope. Sometimes they hammered the hope piece a little bit too hard, right? Every season ends with a hope speech of some sort. But I would say by far she was the brightest part of that. Like I would watch the show and I would be like, this is a horrible script. But boy, she's really great as Supergirl, right? Like I wish that there was better stuff for her to do.
Yeah, I really liked her too.
Okay.
I don't think she and Chris Wood were married until about the 4th season of the show. So I don't think initially, I think they met on the show. But we're going to do a whole discussion about the Legion and we'll get into that then. But I would watch her in other things. I liked her enough that I would, if I saw a TV movie on and I didn't know anything about it and it wasn't some kind of plot that made me go, ooh, squicky, no, I would watch it if she was in it. So
actually, I'm hoping that she'll do a couple of Hallmark movies. I think she would be wonderful. She has that kind of cheeriness.
Well, it's like Ange said, she's good at optimism.
Yeah.
And I thought she was good at the times when things went really badly and she didn't know what to do. She didn't I would rather an actor be understated than ham-fisted with it. And I think she was a little understated with that. And I would really rather have that than over-the-top histrionics.
Yeah. The other thing I'll just add is that she played Overgirl, the Nazi Supergirl in one crossover. She played Red Daughter, the Russian Supergirl. And so she kind of was able to sort of bring a lot of different incarnations onto the show as well. And I'll just say as a side, the singing episodes are some of my favorite ones. Those are just fantastic.
Well, I'm always envious of people who can sing because I can't. It's the old, I can't carry a tune in a bucket. And so when I see these actors who are singing, I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. I can listen to that and be jealous, but I can listen to that. So,
They were cute.
Yeah.
I like those too.
Well, and it's going to be a little hard to discuss the early season relationships in depth because most of us haven't seen those episodes lately. But what did you all think of Kara's relationships with Wynn and James in the first season? Liz, you want to start?
Well, they were not yet formed. So I remembered sitting there and saying, well, this is interesting. The toy man, the toy boy, interesting relationship there. And, James Olsen, James instead of Jimmy. So I had to get used to that. But I thought, they did a nice job of being tentative because they were still learning how to mesh together.
Okay. Ange?
It wasn't on the CW at that point, but there was definitely sort of a formula, right? So it's like, Wynn is the Cisco of this group, right? Like everybody needs that kind of whatever they call it these days, the man in the chair, right?
Yes.
But I do think that he was also there as kind of like a point of view character for, like the nerdy guys who may have read Supergirl comics and had crushes on her, and like maybe she'll end up with him. So I kind of enjoyed his character. And then there is that revelation that he's the son of the toy man, which I think does give him a little bit of more depth than would be anticipated. The James thing is a little bit interesting to me. I thought that the actor was okay. I like the fact that it was a person of color. I like the fact that he came off as like, I am now running, I'm a big shot editor, running things. I thought that was good. I felt the romance between them was a little bit forced. And I think that they recognized it because I think they kissed once and then like pulled the plug on that relationship pretty quickly. But he also is one of those characters that kind of goes through an arc after that first season. I don't know if we'll talk about it, but he becomes the Guardian, then he becomes very much invested in social issues and ends up leaving, right? But I think that first season, he definitely is coming across as sort of the like, oh, I'm the Clark Kent analog here, and I've been through some stuff, and I can sort of help mentor you a little bit. It was the romance part that didn't quite jive with me.
Okay. Marisa?
I agree. The romance was so forced. I liked when she had a crush on him. That seemed fine. Like Wynn had a crush on her. She had a crush on James. Like cute. But then it got real awkward. And even the show was like, no, never mind. We were wrong. This is wrong. So I kind of forgot how charming I found their trio until here goes the spoiler. In the very last episode, they had that like moment where it's just the three of them sitting around the table at the wedding. And they just, it lasted what, like 15 seconds, but it was adorable. And I was like, oh yeah, I used to really like these guys. Like they did have a lot of fun. Like when he was like somewhere between the Cisco and the Felicity, right? Like he was a little overawed by everything that was happening. He brought all that enthusiasm.
And he could sew. And
yeah,
he could
right.
sew.
He made costumes. I forgot he made the costumes. And they had the cute little comment about that. Like, I thought they were really cute. I really did like how Alex and Kara's relationship changed. We're not talking about them though, so I'll pause there. I liked the trio.
Okay. Well, that's a good lead into Alex and Kara, actually. So why don't you start us off and say what you were going to say?
Yeah, okay. So I didn't love that the only reason Kara wasn't Supergirl was to avoid disappointing her sister, but I did love how their relationship evolved over I would say the first 5 seasons. I have some issues with 6, it's fine. But I really enjoyed how they went from, they definitely very much loved each other, but they didn't necessarily trust each other, like with their whole selves, right? Like that was part of how they evolved over the next couple of seasons. And I thought that was an interesting, like Kara, this Supergirl had a much better upbringing than comic Supergirl, where she was just foisted off somewhere into the orphanage and then adopted randomly. And I liked that, but I liked how it wasn't perfect and there was stuff that they had to kind of work through. I really enjoyed that with them.
Liz?
Well, it was an interesting, yes, I agree with Marissa. It was an interesting relationship and it was tentative because, Alex had this whole nother life that she wasn't really talking about and she couldn't. And that was even before, she came out. But yeah, I'm not quite sure, there was nothing in that relationship that I could really complain about. And, as you can tell, my husband and I spent a lot of time complaining about the show. We like that.
Ange?
I think that first season where it's gruff Alex training Kara and there's a little bit of friction there, I thought was very, very good. And then there's like 2 or 3 seasons where all of a sudden it's almost like every episode ended with them like sitting cross-legged on the couch, eating takeout Chinese and kind of like, let's do a little recap and have a funny little joke. And I really felt that they grew so closely, like it's like, oh, the Danvers sisters, and nothing's going to break this team apart. Like they're really working together hand in hand now. How wonderful! And then it seemed like as the seasons went along, each of them were like, okay, we're going to have romances, and now those scenes are not going to be the 2 sisters together on the couch as much. It's now going to be Alex and either Maggie or Alex and Kelly at the end, and Supergirl trying to figure out who she's being with. And so I do feel like there was this beautiful moment in the middle of the series that there was like, these are two characters that are like clearly the axle of the show. And it's so wonderful to see them together. And then it kind of like lost its way. And I do have a lot of complaints about the Alex Kara relationship in the last season, where all of a sudden it went back to being like, I don't know, almost adversarial. And you say, no, like where's like sitting on the couch and having pot stickers, right? Like this is such a 180 to see them like basically like arguing. Like at one point, Kara is like, okay, I guess like I'll let you destroy the universe to save your daughter, right? You know, and it's like, I don't know, like they should be teaming up, not fighting. So I'll tell you, I'm a big Alex fan, probably seasons 1 to 4. And then I think we kind of sort of lose our way.
Yeah, that scene in the
Let's say.
finale when Alex took the device and was gonna, and Kara's, and I was sitting there going, super speed, you possess super speed, you can get that back.
Enraged.
And my husband was
Yes.
just looking at me like, you're really into this. So, but yes, she had super speed. If you really think what Alex is going to do is the wrong thing to do, hello, super speed. And it seemed like, just in general, that frequently when a particular superpower would have been handy, it just didn't come up. And so for those of us who are aware of the full range of Kryptonian abilities on Earth, that I think was a little frustrating at times.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that Mike really had a problem with. It's as though, obviously they weren't actual comic fans. They didn't spend a huge part of their lives, looking at these characters with their powers. So that was, I think you're right. I think, it was frustrating. It's not, what happened? Why are they so weak? Why are they forgetting what they can do?
Yeah, and it's getting back to what Andrew was saying about, Andrew Marisa said that the sister dynamic was the core of the show. And it really was for a while there. And that's unusual because there are not a whole lot of shows where sisters are the core of the show. Brothers sometimes, but very rarely sisters.
Charm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked that because they did have that friction at the beginning and they worked through this. And I thought the episode where they went back to Midvale and kind of there was a lot of flashback was really well done and really important to their relationship. And it did seem like it just fizzled in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to add anything about any of that?
Wow.
Just that the actresses that played the young versions of them in the Midvale episodes are like astonishingly close to being like to a point of like, whoa, like almost creepy in a way. Like give them their own show.
Did you grow them in a vat? How'd you get that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what about Cat Grant to Andrea?
Oh. All right, I'm going to say something here. I don't know what the rest of you do for a living, but I'm an editor and I have been an editor for 44 years. And I've actually worked, from time to time in journalism. And their idea of journalism, it was astonishing. It was astonishing. I think that was part of the problem why. A lot of times my husband and I would just sit at the screen saying, what? Really?
Mhm.
She's not bright enough to have a Pulitzer. She has barely done any work. Really? They don't just hand out Pulitzers for being cute. We would say things like this very loudly. And it's fortunate that we live in a house that, is, we had lots of room because otherwise we would have had neighbors screaming at us to shut up. But anyway. That was my reaction to Cat Grant and Andrea, particularly Andrea at the end saying, oh yeah, well, let's just put this out and see what happens because it's Lex Luthor. Oh no, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself saying yes. But Cat Grant, the actress, she was sort of amusing. You wanted to slap her a lot, but she was amusing.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
So I was not a journalist. I was an English major, but not a journalist. But even I knew that that's not how you get Pulitzers. So yeah, even the whole episode is like, I don't think these words mean what you think they mean. But the I enjoyed in terms of like a character antagonist kind of like I enjoyed Cat Grant for that in the early seasons. She was just fun. She brought a really like nice rough energy in there that I forgot about again until they did the Midvale flashback and you had baby Cat Grant and I was like, oh yeah, I kind of enjoyed this sarcastic, like snappy, handles her business even if that business is totally unrealistic. But who Andrea? I don't know if they had an idea and then that writer left and they didn't have notes, but like that character was all over the place. And when she started and it was like, okay, we're going to do a BuzzFeed thing. It was like, okay, this is annoying, but you're making a point. Okay. And then it was, no, we're just going to do the unethical things. And no, we're just going to do whatever is convenient for the plot today. And now I have powers, but I always had powers, but now I don't. And I have a lot of feelings about how poorly that was executed. Obviously. So that's how I feel about that.
Okay. Ange, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'll say that, that first season, it's sort of Kara trying to figure out who she is. And so she has these two women role models of Alex, who is this experienced DEO agent and kind of like gruff and, ready to pull the trigger. And then Kat, who is this, and again, middle-aged white male here, but I would say like a feminist, like this is right. Hey, she's supposed to be like, you can be called girl. That's okay. Embrace your future and like lead us. And I thought that Callista Flockhart did very good with that. The whole thing of calling her Kira, making her get coffee, all that sort of stuff was sort of cute. I agree about Andrea because it was sort of like, first we're going to be a BuzzFeed thing, which I get because again, they like to plan a lot of social things. Then like at one point she was like, no, we have to become number one by being extremely ethical. And then the next episode, she's like, we should just run something without doing any sort of checking. And then she's like, no, we need to get more clicks. And it's like, wait, it's like every episode you're a different person. And I don't think that she had the charisma necessarily to sort of say like, well, I guess I'll roll with it because it's Andrea. It's just sort of like, I don't understand why you're behind that big desk. And honestly, I don't know if I clearly understand what CatGo is. Is it a news station? Is it a magazine? Is it an internet
It's a
feed?
media conglomeration.
Right? Is it
forgot
all of
about
those
that,
things? Right? And if it's all of those things, like you can't be like, William, I don't know if we'll ever talk about him. Like he can't be I'm the reporter that was, undercover with these people, but I'm also here at a fire with a microphone, like, doing the 6 o'clock news feed. So I think it was tough, that back half with Andrea to really sort of, to feel that worked. And how Kara still had a job, I have no idea because she was never there, right? So
She had that
Yes.
Pulitzer. She had
Yes.
that Pulitzer.
right.
That was
So I
fun.
almost feel it's like they should almost have gotten rid of that whole like plot thread because it just seemed like they felt like they needed to have it there. And then they kept running into like, I can't write this story because of who I am. So, but I liked Kat more than Andrea.
I liked Kat more than Andrea too. I enjoyed Callista Flockhart in the role.
Mhm.
I think
Yes.
had that role been played by someone else, I would not have enjoyed it quite so much because someone else would have brought a different approach to it. I liked Andrea when she was Lena's struggling friend. I did
Mhm.
not like her when she became the head of CatCo, which I think is, to get back to what Ange said, it's whatever they need it to be this week, and it involves big screens on the wall. It just didn't. My college journalism classes, I didn't take classes. I was on the news staff of the college radio station, and we were more careful than they are. And we were like 18. So it was not impressive. And it was kind of disappointing because we were talking a couple of weeks ago, we did a panel on Superman and Lois. Marisa was on that panel. And we were saying how much we enjoyed the way the journalism and the other things were handled on that show. And when you think of that show, which is a CW show, and then you think of this show, it's just like they threw the newspaper in because she had to have a job. I don't think they had a journalism consultant like they have law enforcement consultants or gun consultants or whatever. And it was disappointing because it just was all over the place. I thought, Marisa, you were laughing. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just they definitely did not have a journalism consultant. I can only imagine if somebody had that job and they ran the Pulitzer storyline by them. Like I'm just thinking about how Elizabeth just reacted, and I'm thinking about this poor this poor former journalist sitting in the writer's room like, what? Sorry, what? Words mean things. Anyway.
But that former journalist would have been saying, I'm getting paid for this. I got laid off from my magazine
From
/
BuzzFeed.
newspaper.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm getting paid to sit here and just listen to this.
Well, since we're talking about Catco, why don't we move on and talk about William? Ange, you want to kick off the discussion?
Boy, he was a block of wood the first season that he was on. I hate to be so cruel, but I don't like, and again, it always seemed like there were these romances that they were trying to give Supergirl that were like, where did that come from? And so the first season that he arrived, the Leviathan season, I guess, and I was like, I don't even understand why this guy is here. I don't even understand what the attraction is. I don't even understand what they're trying to do with it. And then surprisingly, this last season, he became like a little bit more interesting. He had like a little bit of integrity when it came to the journalism. Maybe they overplayed the fact that he was a baker, but he seemed to like interact with the group a little bit more. And he became more interesting. May very well be because they didn't shove the romance down, that he could actually become this, I'm just the civilian who's hanging out with you guys. I don't know if you told me we're going to go back in time and just never have his character on the show, if I would be devastated. But I will say that the last season, he was a little bit more interesting than he was the first season, where I felt he was like a barnacle that could have been scraped off the hull.
That's a great description.
Yeah.
That's absolutely, I think the only time I liked him at all was right before he was murdered, when he was hanging out with the super adorable little Muppet that is Alex and Kelly's daughter, whose name I've totally forgotten.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Thank you.
That's
She's
right,
a plot
Esme.
device, but she's adorable. And that couple of episodes where he like helped watch her and did the cute little, you're right, the baking thing was a little overdone, but also it was like the most charming he ever was allowed to be.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, see, in this moment, I could see if Kara was like, ooh, cutie patootie. But before that, I was like, Kara, no. Kara, no.
No, and
Everybody
again,
knows.
I don't think it's the actor's fault. I think he just didn't
Agreed.
have much to work with.
No.
Yeah.
And
was-
it's like they didn't sit down and figure out, where's he coming from? What's he done? What's his issue in life? How can we play on that? And it sort of felt like with all of Supergirl's tentative, possible proposed boyfriends, that hadn't been done, that they weren't three-dimensional people. William came across really well when Lex confronted him and he set up his phone to record it, and he didn't rat out Andre when Lex said, you exposed my secrets. He didn't say it wasn't me. He didn't say anything. Yeah. And then afterwards, by the end of the wedding, Andre was just fine with it. She didn't feel guilty at all that she was responsible for this. It was, just another day in her work life.
No, I get people killed all the time. It's okay.
It's fine. At least I didn't kill with my weird shadow powers this time. So, and they did.
Yeah. And there again, I don't think it's the actor's fault. She
did the best she could. Yeah, what she had. Yikes.
Well, since we're talking about relationships, let's talk about the giant elephant in the room, Mon-El and the Legion of Superheroes.
Yes.
So can we also just point out that Kara had more chemistry with the Flash in the 4 seconds of their first crossover, like with the ice cream and the whatever thing, like that stands out to me more than the entirety of the Mon-El relationship.
Yes.
Was how adorable that was. And I was like, could you just have friends? Could we stop trying to make her fall in love with everybody? Because girl's life is complicated. Let her just live. But
yes,
that's so much chemistry with Flash, so little with Mon-El, who she married in real life.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we never know, do we? Anybody else want to weigh in?
No, I think Marissa said it pretty well. shoving a romance in because they figured that the viewers would want a romance in there usually does not turn out well. And it did not turn out well here. And it's not just because Mon-El should not be married to Saturn Girl.
Yeah.
Again.
Like, it's the hill. That is the hill. We will die on that hill. That's legit.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I am Team Garth. Garth Rans all the way.
Yeah,
Exactly.
No, if I had a T-shirt, I would wear it a lot. Team Garth about this. No, we don't do that.
All right. Remind me to see if I can find one for you.
Nice.
Well, thank you. I actually have a Saturn Girl T-shirt. It's
nice.
it's red and it has a big yellow planet Saturn on the front, and so I wear that to conventions sometimes. And they have a Lightning Lad T-shirt, but it's not. It's like simulating his uniform. It's not
Yeah.
him, and so. And when you go to cons for a long time, you acquire a lot of shirts with stuff on them.
Yes.
And so if I'm going to get another shirt with stuff on it, it needs to be stuff that I really like.
It's legit. Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, I thought that Chris Wood was okay in it. Liz and I had a friend who was a huge Mon-El fan. I mean, the fact that Mon-El spent 1,000 years in the Phantom Zone, I think was really what drew her to that character. And in the classic Legion of Superheroes, it was formative for that character. He spent 1,000 years locked up with Krypton's worst criminals, came out of it not only sane, but a hero.
Yes.
And instead, they decided he's the spoiled brat fun of some spoiled brat autocratic Daxamites, and he's a party boy. And, when we were talking on the Superman and Lois panel, we talked about Supergirl briefly, and we were saying that really the origin that they gave her, instead of being tucked in an orphanage to be Superman's emergency weapon, had so much more storytelling potential. That's where we came down, wasn't it, Marisa?
Yep.
And so if you're going to change it for something good. And, just a look at Kevin Sorbo and Terry Hatcher being evil Daxamites is not, for me, enough. But, if you all feel differently, please feel free to say so.
No.
I mean, I think the point was supposed to be that he starts out as this frat boy, autocrat, spoiled prince. And then over the course of working with Supergirl at the end, he's like, oh, I'm so much more noble now. And I understand like all of the mistakes that my family has made, my planet has made, and all that sort of stuff. The problem was that I think right up to the last episode, he's still doing stuff that's like, oh, he's a spoiled brat autocrat, right? And so it's not as if there was growth over the course of the season, which I thought was the big issue there. Like, I don't understand, like they argued a lot, right? About like, how can you be this way? It's like, so I don't understand. I guess there are some relationships that thrive on that sort of fire, but it didn't seem to make sense. And then, like you say, the next season he comes back and it's like, well, I've lived in the future for a while and I've married this other person. It seemed like an unnecessary like kick to the gut, especially given the continuity gaffe from comic fans. So I thought that he's a handsome guy and he wore the costume very well, but I don't know if his character was like, wow, like, he really grew up and became a hero. I just don't know if I ever really got that sense.
We spent a lot of time on him for Supergirl's show.
Yeah.
For him to not change or really add much. Agreed. I don't think the actor is at fault. I think the actor was charming. I think there were moments he did a lovely job, but we spent so much time watching him be like, now I'm trying, just kidding. That was a hard 5 minutes. I don't want to try anymore. And then disappear to come back and be like, hey, it's 15 minutes for you. But for me, it's been 10 years and I'm in love with this chick and I'm going to make it weird for like that. Why?
No.
Well, I saw an interview where the people behind the show said they really loved the Legion of Superheroes. And so I'd be sitting there going, exactly what version of the Legion of Superheroes are you loving? Because they seem to mostly love messing it up.
Right. That's it.
It's like in the wedding episode, Wynn is back from the future where he's married to apparently Isla Rand's
Right.
White Lass. Now, I have not been as careful about reading the newer incarnations of the Legion as I was when I was glued to the older versions as a child. But I didn't remember that her power was canceling gravity. I thought her power was just making things lightweight, which I guess you could call canceling gravity. But then he's saying, well, you know, it's going to be a different DEO. Oh, you're in McGann's daughter, this and that. And I'm like, what was the cardinal rule of the Legion of Superheroes when they came to the 20th century?
Don't
Yeah,
change
don't
things.
tell nobody.
Ridiculous.
It just, and there again, I mean, Jeremy Jordan's a terrific actor. He's
Oh, sure.
appeared on Broadway. He's got a great resume. But Wynn just came off as kind of like, I know things you don't know. And there again, I don't think that's his fault. And I don't know what Legion they love because it's not.
Wasn't that one? Yeah.
No. But that kind of ties into the Reign storyline, because when the Legion came back, it was to stop the blight that Reign was tied to.
Right.
And I will just say, as a member of Team Garth and as the moderator and therefore in charge of the microphone, before we move on, that when Imra and Monel decided to call their marriage of state or whatever it was quits, she said, I want someone who chooses me with his whole heart. And I thought, you have solved the blight. He is in the 30th century. He is waiting for you. Go back and meet him. So I just want to get that off my chest.
That's a jet. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But Reign, the Reign storyline and Odette Annable in that. What did you all think of the character and of the actor?
I like Odette Annable. You know, she has done a lot of stuff that I've seen her in, and at no point did I ever want to slap her across the face, which, you know.
It's a high bar on this show sometimes. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I was saying far crueler things before you came on. But, you know, the character, interesting. Needed a little more work, which is, you know, my way of saying, okay, didn't work for me, it might have worked for somebody else.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I forgot all about that whole storyline until I was looking at Wikipedia earlier to remind myself what the earlier seasons look like. And I was like, oh, no, maybe I liked it. But I think, to exactly your point, Liz, I think I liked the actress. And she felt, the character, as we went later into the season, felt like a second draft character. Like they did a little more thinking than they did in the first draft. They didn't quite get there though. Like I didn't feel like it entirely came together, but I loved the relationship aspect of it, of having the human part of her be tight with Lena and tight with Kara.
Mhm.
I really like that. I kind of wish that had found a way to come back in later seasons. So I thought they did a nice job selling that. It happened real quick at first, but I think they sold it because those actresses were just great. But then as it kind of kept going, I was like, you almost have a story here, but I don't feel great
They
about
had
the
to
storyline.
stretch it out because that was going to be the thing for the season, but
Yeah.
you know, it was stretched out. It was painful.
I think if I had to rank all of the big bads, I'd probably rank Reign first, because I think that she actually was a threat. And I think that they actually did do a good job of showing like, oh, two Kryptonians or two people with Kryptonian powers fighting. There's one scene where they're like wrecking their way through a Christmas party at some place and then out onto the street, that I was like, this is really like, oh, it almost feels like big screen action. And so, and I thought that the actress was tremendous. Certainly when she put on the costume, she like got a different personality and definitely showed that she was I'm the big evil here. I do think that the end of that story got so murky in terms of like, well, it's Reign is in the body, but not in the body because she's Reign. And then all of a sudden, and we don't want to kill her. So we'll figure out like, oh, poof, like, no, okay, everything's okay. And so a second draft is a really great way to think about it, because it's almost like, you know, we wrote everything except the last chapter. And like, now what, you know? So
It's better.
yeah, you know, but I do think that, you know, when you look, Reign as a character in the comic books is like a world killer that's in like 6 issues of the new 52 Supergirl. I like this Rain way more than that Rain. And I think that says a lot. And again, this is one of those things where whoever is the casting person deserves a lot of kudos because I think that Odette Annabelle did a lot with, again, some sketchy material here and there.
Well, and I liked the part of the story where she was not aware that she was Rain.
Yeah.
And I liked the way Odette Annabelle handled that. It would have been really easy to make that kind of campy. And she didn't. She put a lot of emotion into it when she didn't know where she'd been. Ruby didn't know where she would been. And I liked that dimension of it almost more than the I'm going to destroy the world and set loose the blight thing, because it felt like the character had a bigger stake in that than she did in setting loose the blight. So does anybody want to add anything about Rain before we move on?
Forgot about the Ruby thing. I liked Ruby. I liked Alex and Ruby's relationship. I think it started to lead to like Alex had one thing to do every season. Like that season it was be obsessed with having babies. Which okay, sure. But I remember that being I like how they worked in the daughter, especially for Human Rain. Her name exists, I know. But especially for her conflict, like working in that she had a baby young and her daughter is kind of her anchor and is probably what's going to save. Like, I thought that was a nice way to do the like love of a child will help get us through here, as opposed to some of the ways it happened in season 6. But I enjoyed that. I thought that was done well.
It's funny now that you say that. I thought for sure it was going to be like, oh, Rain has to die. And now we have this built in, like, and then Ruby just comes in and is Alex's kid.
Yep. Exactly what I thought.
But never came to be.
Well, and that I thought that was kind of going to happen too. And if a bunch of people thought that, I guess that would make it low-hanging fruit. And as frustrated as we get with them, sometimes we have to give them a point for not grabbing the low-hanging fruit on that one.
Sure. Although they then
That's
did just
surprising.
go ahead and do it in 6. I mean, they just, but with less emotional stakes. They're like, oh, surprise! That thing you thought we were going to do in 3, we're doing here. Haha.
Really cute kid though. Both.
So
I mean,
cute.
Ruby was older, but the
Yeah.
actress who played Esme, really cute. And
She's just a cute little Muppet. She's so cute.
yeah. Well, let's talk about Kara's best friend, who's not Alex, Lena Luthor, and the arc that they had. Because we've mentioned the Pulitzer story a couple of times. And the Pulitzer ceremony was tied into Kara's conflict about telling Lena the truth.
Mhm.
So what did you think of Lena's arc through the 6 seasons of the series? Whoever wants to start, just jump in.
Okay, I'm going to, well, all right. It was one thing to always say, all right, we can't tell her because one thing or another. But okay. And she was angry. She was hurt that she didn't find out. And that is a trope that just drives me crazy. You didn't tell me, thus I am angry because everybody should tell me everything, right? You know, again, grow up. But this last season, I'm a witch. Wah! What? What was that about? Why was that about? Are you nuts? Who's doing the writing here? No,
An
what?
AI, a bot program.
Well, you know, I think somebody sat in a room and said, okay, now everybody's going to be the Super Friends, and we can talk about that too. And in order to be in the Super Friends, even though Brainiac 5's power is his brain, we can't have another person whose power is their brain. And therefore, since Brainiac 5 is established as the big brain in the comic book, Lena has to be something else. I know, magic was kind of what it felt like.
I agree completely that was probably the motivation behind it, because you can't have two people saying like, I'm going to make a device that's going to do everything we need to do. I thought the actress again was great. I thought that her trying to distance herself from being a Luthor and then falling into being kind of evil and then falling out of being evil and then being seduced back into evil. I thought all of that made good sense. And I thought she had a lot of good stuff to chew on about that. But I think that this last season was sort of lost. And I think that's a shame because I do think she's one of the stronger characters that really came. I mean, I know that she's in the comics, but she hasn't, this is like a different incarnation of Lena Luthor than I would say is in the comics typically. And I thought that she was really fantastic. I do think it was the whole plot line where she's like, I can't have anybody hurt anybody anymore, so I'm going to like debrain them. And then like at some point she's like, oh my God, I've become my brother, right? You know, I think was like a really great like turning point for the character because you could see like it's just, oh, you can very much slowly ease your way into being evil, thinking that it's the right thing to do. So I really liked that part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I loved that character. I loved that actress. That was amazing. I feel like season 6 is one of those, like, maybe we just don't talk about it, like the mystery other Highlander movies that don't exist, you know, like it's one of those things because I don't know what they were thinking there, but also fully agree that trope of like, I'm going to conveniently not tell you this thing, even though I told the fireman last week. And now like, it's going to be like, it was, I yelled. I was Liz and her husband, and this episode, I yelled at the screen. I was like, just say it, just say it. Like if you just, so I hated that. But I do agree with Ange that it kicked off that really interesting storyline that did make sense for her characters. It was a little over the top, but then they did the flashbacks of like, look at all these times people have lied to her and look at her upbringing, and it kind of makes sense. I think the thing that I'm wondering about with 6 is apparently, I found out about this really late. Like I never get into online fandoms in a timely fashion. And for Supergirl, apparently a big thing with the online fandom was Supercore. It was the Lena Supergirl are secretly in love. And I feel like the writers either tried too hard to hint at it, but not do it, or too hard to not hint at it and just got to a weird place. And that then we got season 6. Like, I don't know what exactly they were trying to do about that, but I feel like it was one of those places where writers reading social media didn't do them any favors because it was a mess. What a mess.
I thought her relationship with Lex was really interesting, and John Cryer did a really great job.
Oh,
as
he was wonderful.
Yeah, agreed. And I think Brenda Strong as Lillian was also great. And when the 3 of them were on screen at the same time, that was like, get me my popcorn. You know what I mean? Like it was so good. John Cryer was so good. So
yeah, and then when they did the Crisis on Infinite Earths thing, and he had that scene with Tom Welling and Erica Durance, that was a fun scene.
That was good. He was good that whole thing.
Yeah, I remember.
that whole thing. And for me, like one of the best things about that is that you might remember at the end of, I think, season 4 or maybe season 5, Lena just shoots him in cold blood, right?
So good though.
And it was so good. It was so good. I like screen capped that shot with the muzzle flash, and I put it on Twitter every so often. It's like the best thing ever. You know,
That's awesome.
It's like enough with Lex. I've had it, right? Old school. So
It was good.
So good.
You know, though, I love that you said that because season 6, man. But I was like, why bother to do Crisis if then you're going to have all these like, Nixley is the worst thing we've ever faced, but we're not going to like call our pal Barry who has super speed. Like, we're not going to call whatever. We're not going to call any of these other heroes who exist here now. It was ridiculous. But the lead into Crisis and Crisis itself did give us those really great scenes. So I guess I can't complain too much about that.
Well, I was really disappointed that Tyler Heckland and Elizabeth Tullock were not in the finale, because there'd been some kind of hinting on social media that they might be.
Oh, really?
And then they weren't. But then I stop and think, okay, every time they have an actor appear and say something, that actor has to be paid a lot more than an actor who just walks through the shot. So you know, I would have liked to have seen some other members of the Legion of Superheroes, although it would have been painful because they probably wouldn't be the members of Legion of Superheroes as I know the members of the Legion of Superheroes. But, and then Mon-El says, well, I'm not coming back in this lifetime. It's like, you don't live in this lifetime. You live in the future.
Like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
It was just bizarre.
Yeah.
So we've talked about Lex and we've talked about Alex and Lena. And honestly, with Lena, I feel like if they had wanted to give her conflicts with her natural mother, they should have started that last season and built it and not just kind of dumped it in there this season and gone, oh, all of a sudden she's mastered this skill that takes people a lifetime to learn. Just
Well, again, this is a world in which, you know, cute blondes with no experience get Pulitzers.
Pulitzers, sure.
This is a CW show.
Oh, man.
But
so we're coming up toward the end. So what about season 6?
yes, what about it?
Yeah, if it hadn't been the last season, I would have quit watching the show. Like there's a point about halfway through, I was like, why am I don't hate watch things. Like, why am I watching this? I no longer like anybody. Everybody is awful to each other. And that's not why we watch this. Like, we watch this because they had this like beautiful core, like Ange was saying, like the sisters and this family they built around themselves. Like, that's why I watched it, and watched them to argue about child rearing and give me lessons on whatever. I didn't watch this for morals.
Yes.
I'm good. I don't need to be lectured at. And it was like 8 episodes left maybe, and I was like, all right, I can make it to the end, but so bad.
Yeah, I mean, I will agree that the whole totems, let's make gauntlets, let's, you know, we're going to drain hope to use hope as a weapon, let's drain the sun and put the earth in a 6-month ice age to, right? Like, there was so much that, like, each episode just felt like they just put words in a blender and hit trap, you know? And that I really have to say I sort of struggled with it as well. And the other thing, so not only Lena's character suddenly being like, oh, she knows exactly what to do, she's holding a grimoire, but Lex being, oh, I'm like a lovesick puppy and I'm willing to do anything, even though his entire thing had been like, oh, I'm the narcissist, I'm going to kill everybody and I'm going to be in complete control. I don't care about anybody other than me. So there was just a lot of stuff that I just struggled with. And so it's kind of like, I feel it went out on a low note, but it's not the first show to do that, I suppose.
Well, at one point when they were running around trying to find totems, my husband, who I think gets points for valiantly watching it with me all this time, turned to me and he went, didn't the Avengers do something like that?
Fair enough.
Yes, actually they did.
Yeah.
But they had a glove and he went, okay. It's like,
Kind of got
but you know, I just didn't, the whole thing with Nixley just didn't engage me. And we went through all this to find Zor-El in the Phantom Zone and get Zor-El out of the Phantom Zone. And then Zor-El went poof. And we were stuck with Nixley. And I would rather have had Zor-El, frankly.
Yes.
yeah.
So what'd you think of their Phantom Zone?
It was a little bit too Harry Potter, right? Those things were definitely Dementors. I mean, they even called them Dementors, I think, at one point. But I thought it certainly looked harsh enough and certainly seemed to have a sort of like psychic ramification that I don't think the comic, where they're just like wraiths, like this really seemed to destroy you. But I was certainly glad when she was out, because it really seemed to separate her from her own show.
Well, and I have, as I've said on other panels before, it's hard for me when something deviates from the comic book canon as I know it. And in the comic book canon, the Phantom Zone, originally, they've changed it in recent years, but I tend to stick with the first thing I saw, which was the purple. kind of purple, and there wasn't really a ground, and there wasn't really a sky, and they were just kind of
Yeah.
wafting around, and they were Phantom Zone villains, and they were trying to make things tough for Superman, and they were mean to Mon-El, and Mon-El would try to help people when he could. And so to me, that's the Phantom Zone. So when we got a weird planet in another dimension with, I mean, to me, they look like zombies to floating around.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
I don't know, it didn't grab me
Hmm.
at all. And there again, I thought the actor who played Nixley did a really good job with what she had to work with. It was kind of campy and over the top. But really don't think that's her fault.
Mm-mm.
But
That's
it's hard to
usually-
watch a show and keep sitting there going, well, this is not really the actor's fault.
Yeah.
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 How often can you do that
Mhm.
before just getting very, very just dismayed about everything?
Yeah.
Although, one thing I did like about that the show did was they made Helen Slater Eliza Danvers.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was
That
nice.
was cute.
That was a
Very
nice little callback.
I do wish they did that cute thing where she did she shot something and she was like, oh, maybe I could have been Supergirl in another life or something. That was cute. Should have left it there. I did not like Alex's, yeah, maybe in the movies. Like, don't. It was yet another example though, right? In season 6 of just like make a character do a thing, even if it has nothing to do. Like, that's not how Alex talks to her mom, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not even an Alex quippy comment. Like, you could do better. Like, I would watch that movie. She could say that. That would
Sure.
have been delightful. But there were
Yes.
so many cringy moments like that. That's not movie
Mm.
Supergirl's fault at all. Like that one line that they gave her was delightful and adorable. Then they just immediately ruined it because I don't know. I don't know if it was the writers' room in general, if everyone had just given up, if there's some studio exec giving notes that are unhelpful. Like, it was
That's
unfortunate though.
always a possibility.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but the whole concept of now we have the Super Friends. And then I saw somebody suggest on social media, and I don't remember who it was, that one reason Nixley was the big bad for the last part of the season is because Alex and Kelly could not have stood up to someone of Brainiac caliber or Rain caliber. What do you all think about that?
Well,
Nixley
I'll
was-
just say,
No, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I'll just say that one thing about the Super Friends concept is that it suddenly means that Supergirl is one of 7 and not the lead character with
Mhm.
supporting characters, right? It was more like a Justice League show. And I do think that she can fly and she seems to have heat vision. She doesn't often even punch things with super strength, right? And so I think that they really tried to carve out what everybody could sort of do. If you think about the season, Nixley, for the majority of it, is wearing a power canceling bracelet, right? So she can't even use her 5th dimensional powers. She has to use whatever totem she has. So I suppose that you have to figure out how Alex and Kelly can join in the fight, given there's the Martian Manhunter and Supergirl, who alone probably can take care of almost everything. But I think that they just spliced away so much time on all of these other characters that I don't even know, it should have been called Super Friends and not Supergirl necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, it's lazy storytelling. And the harder I have to work at telling a story as a writer, the more I get angry about these things when I see them like in media. But if that's the whole reason that you created a character, that's a terrible reason to decide who your last big bad is. Find something for them to do then, because then you're saying the only value Alex and Kelly bring to the table is against a depowered, fangless villain, which is insulting then to the characters that you think you built. So come up with a story for them to do something. Like, maybe, I don't know, Alex was a DEO agent forever. Maybe she could gather intelligence. That could be a thing that she does. Like, what does she have experience doing? What could Kelly do by being now connected to all of the aliens, apparently? who aren't like doing very well. Like she could go find out information. Like there are things you can do that are interesting on screen to still have your characters do things and then have an engaging story. But I think when you are making excuses for these boxes that you built yourself, that's lazy. It is lazy storytelling, and it's insulting. I don't know. I think it was, you're not doing anybody any favors. I have a lot of rage about this apparently.
You're not shouting about it, so.
Not today. Not today.
Well, Liz, did you want to add anything to that?
If I did, I've already forgotten. So no.
Okay. Well, then the finale, the wrap up. What did you think was the best part of it? And what were the parts of it you think really we could have done without?
Nixley. Could have done without Nixley. Wedding was nice. The reception was nice. Character development at the very last. Wasn't sure whether Cat Grant was saying, just tell everybody that you're Supergirl. Really? Is that really a good idea? Again, who's thinking about this? Are they thinking at all? So there were nice things. There were many not nice things, but they had a nice idea once, 6 years ago.
Yeah. Is the question about the show finale or the show in general?
Well, I had intended it to be about the show finale, but whatever you want to add is welcome.
I will say that there were parts of me during the season that I worried that the show was going to end with her going to Argo and retiring. There was parts of this show that I thought was going to end with her dying, and there were parts that I thought she was going to go into the future and marry Mon-El. And so the fact that it ended the way it did and not any of those three made me like, thank goodness, okay, because I could see it easily going one of those ways. And the fact that she sort of embraces her heroism as opposed to, I thought she honestly was going to say the time in the Phantom Zone was too traumatic. I'm going to go live on Argo with my people. I was like, oh, please, we don't need that. And so I'll say that I was happy with that ending, which I think was probably a decent way to leave the show, even if it took us getting through all of season 6 together.
Okay.
Yeah. I am glad. I thought my husband and I definitely thought that she was going to go to the future too. And that's also how they were going to explain why she didn't show up on the Superman and Lois show. So I am glad she didn't do that because yikes. Okay. So I thought the wedding was beautiful. I was very happy. I think Alex and Kelly, those actresses really sold it. I loved that the Martian Manhunter was the efficient. I thought that was adorable. I could have done without all the seat fillers. Like, who are these people? Just have it be a really small ceremony. I think that would have been perfectly fine. Unless we find out that in real life it was like members of the cast or something. I don't think there was any reason to do that. But because they're all just strangers. Like, who are these people? Nobody knows. They have actual friends that we've seen.
Care. Yeah.
I don't care. Why are they here? Anyway. So I thought that was adorable. I thought the actress that plays Esme did, so it was just that, like, yay, we're married, like, made my heart grow 4 sizes that day. Like, it was adorable. So it's cute. I really liked how Cat Grant obviously knew that Kara was Supergirl. So I liked that, like, she's like, oh, is it that part? God, that's like 3 years ago. I've known this whole, like, I thought that was well done. And I think in the moment I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, she's going to bring both sides of her personality together. Cool. But then I was like, but that was 6 years of her saying she couldn't do that. And then one phone call said she could do that. I didn't like on retrospect, I didn't like it as much, but overall it was cute. I was glad it was over. It didn't end as horribly as other shows have, Game of Thrones. And so, that was better.
Faint praise.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, at the end, when she revealed her identity to the world, for me, I found myself comparing it with when Clark did that in the comic book. And they did so much more consideration with it and so much more buildup with it because that's a big moment for the character. That's huge. And it was just kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this now, and smile into the camera. And I just sort of felt like if they were going to do that, they should have done it sooner and let us see the ramifications of it and see her working on it. Because as we've said, Marissa Benoist is a good actor. She could have carried that and she could have made it interesting, but she didn't get the chance to make it interesting. She just got the chance to smile at the camera and look happy without the glasses. And it was just, for me, a relief that it didn't do any of those things that you all mentioned, but it was a letdown. I just felt like there again, you took a moment that could have been something big and you just kind of threw it against the wall to see if it would stick. It was just, I don't know.
Okay.
Well, does anybody want to add anything before we wrap up?
I mean, the one thing I'll say is Supergirl has been my favorite character forever. And before the show, people never knew that word. And now random people where I work at least know that she's a legitimate character and did that. And so, at the very least, she is now much more universally known, I think, thanks to this show. And so I'm grateful for that.
Okay, well, that's a good note to end on, actually.
Yep.
So why don't we go around and you can tell everybody where they can find you, find information about what you're up to, and we'll start with you, Ange.
Like I said before, the blog is called Comic Box Commentary, but if you type Supergirl blog into Google, I'll be at the top. And I've been doing it for about 13 years, covering Supergirl, Superman, Legion stuff in all of their media. And I hope you take a peek.
Liz?
You can find me at emsflynn.com or for my writing, eilisflynn.com. And, one is for editing, one is for writing.
Okay, Marisa?
MarissaWolfe.com or .net. I bought both. And that will have all of my books and whatnot. I have a new book coming out December 17th. There are no superheroes in there, but there is some ranting. So, you want some cat assassin ranting, that'll come out December 17th.
Okay.
And you can find me here at ConTinual a lot. You can also find information about my books and about me at www.nancynorthcott.com and on Twitter, where I spend more time than is good for me, and I am at Nancy Northcott. And so I'd like to thank everybody for joining me for this panel and to thank our sponsors, Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and Heroes Convention. And you can find more information about them by going to I lost my count of my W's. Okay, you can find out more information about them by going to www.heroesonline.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.